Hello, I'm Nelson Bird. I'm standing on the shores of Lac La Ronge, one of Saskatchewan's largest lakes. La Ronge, the town, sits on the western edge of the lake and is the hub of a lot of activity, especially for tourists. Tourism plays a major role in the community. Every year, thousands of people from all over the world begin their adventures here, and Aboriginal people are there to help them on their journey. Tonight we'll look at the role Aboriginal people play in tourism. Is tourism connected historically to a traditional lifestyle, or is it simply a way to make a living? Perhaps it's both. When we return, we'll take you to the heart of northern Saskatchewan and try to answer that question. We'll be right back. John Charles can fillet fish in record time, about 8 a minute. He's had a lot of practice because he's been guiding for over 40 years. On this day, he's preparing the morning catch for a shore lunch.
I love it, yeah. It's part of my life. That's what I do for my living. I do the best, that's my best, how to make my living. I have no problem to live in the bush for months and months because I was treated, my parents taught me how to do it.
John works for the Churchill River Voyager Outfitting Lodge north of La Ronge. For 5 months a year, he takes fishermen, mostly non-native, to the farthest reaches of the Churchill River system and beyond.
Well, they're learning from us. Some of them, they don't know how to fish, so we show them how to fish, how to catch a fish, how to, to take fish out, and the kind of lures to use, But some of them are good at it.
There are dozens of outfitting camps in the north. The rivers and lakes are dotted with them. Businesses, especially in towns like La Ronge, largely depend on visitors from the south. Aboriginal people make up over 70% of the population, and it's no surprise that their livelihood depends on those visitors.
There are some studies that show that $1 spent in tourism brings another $3.50 as it circulates. Another $3.50 in the community as it circulates through here. It gets spent 3.5 times again. There are different ways of looking at that number, but the spin-off effect is huge with the tourism industry.
Angus Pratt is the La Ronge Community Development Coordinator. He sees the outfitting experience as one piece of a larger puzzle, a puzzle called tourism, one in which Aboriginal people are key players.
Outfitters often use that "We Have Cree Guides" as a marketing tool. People wanted that authentic experience. They wanted that strong, silent Indian type that really knew the wilderness, and there were safety aspects to it. And people felt secure, but there were also cultural, interpretive kinds of aspects.
That the strong, silent Indian goes back centuries. History shows Aboriginal people helped map the country. They knew the lakes, rivers, and forests like the back of their hands. That knowledge persists, although it has changed.
The problem is that we've got a generation of kids that have gone to residential school and really been divorced from a lot of that. So you find some traditional families where that knowledge has been kept alive, but it's more and more of a struggle. And then when you combine it with kind of the modern requirements for certification in St. John's Ambulance or first aid and CPR or boat safety requirements now, those sorts of things, it can make it a real challenge to survive in this industry.
Today, tourists want to experience more than just a day or two of fishing. They want a real adventure, one that includes history and ecology.
People go to have an experience. They go to have a cultural experience. They go to look at birds. They go to see some particular kind of wildlife. They go to participate in some particular kind of adventure activity, canoeing or cross-country skiing or sled dog, or just being in nature.
And it's this demand for adventure that threatens the role on Aboriginal people. The guides are still there and they're vital to the fishermen, but they're slow to adapt to the changing expectations of the new breed of tourist in the north. Rick Driediger owns Churchill River Canoe Outfitting Camp. He employs a few Aboriginal people. His guides are non-Aboriginal.
The demand on a guide has changed considerably over the years. It used to be that the only qualification for being a guide is be able to find the fish. Now, the people that are coming up would like to interact with the guide, and a lot of the people that are here are doctors and lawyers, and maybe they have 3 PhDs or whatever, and to be able to, for a guide like me or whatever, to be able to communicate with that person, it's difficult. It requires an education, it requires knowledge, it requires a communication skill that 20 years ago people didn't need.
For fishermen, it's not communication, but the fish and what it takes to catch them that matters most. John Charles knows this. The longtime Aboriginal guide gets by with a quiet personality. On this day, his clients from across North America are just happy to reel in a few walleye and northern pike.
Well, Big John's pretty fun. It's a lot of fun. He talks a lot. It's easy to be around, so plus he knows everything about the place, so it's good. I have a great time.
Yeah, it's neat just knowing that they've been here for thousands of years, and we're just privileged to come up and learn a few things from them. Yeah.
The morning's catch leads to an outfitting tradition, the shore lunch. The guides take their clients to an out-of-the-way picturesque spot for an unforgettable meal. John and his fellow guides prepare a meal of fresh fish, potatoes, and beans. Whether you're fishing, hiking, or just traveling along the lakes and rivers of Saskatchewan, sooner or later you get hungry. And it doesn't get much better than a shore lunch with fresh pickerel, right?
That's correct. It's absolutely excellent.
We'll be back right after the break. Typically, people are drawn to the north for the fishing and the hunting, but there's more to it than that. If you are at all interested in the history of the region, you'll find it written in the rocks along the banks of the Churchill River. Rock paintings can be found along the Churchill River and other lakes in the north. You just have to know where to look. Here, in plain sight, a caribou is pursued by another animal. To the right, a man holds what appears to be a rifle. Most rock art predates the introduction of firearms. This one was obviously made after the white man arrived in the north. Still, it's estimated to be over 200 years old. The paintings are a 15-minute boat ride from Stanley Mission, a community of over 1,500 people. The town and its members are part of the Lac La Ronge Indian Band. Stanley Mission is best known for the Holy Trinity Church, the oldest building in Saskatchewan. The 150-year-old church sits directly across from the town. The church and the cemetery are maintained by community members. The church is still used, but only for funerals and the occasional wedding. True to its unique character, under the floorboards of the church is buried a longtime church organist, buried around the turn of the century. The cemetery with its colorful fences and flowers is in sharp contrast to the lakes and trees that surround it.
I guess you live here, you take a lot of this stuff for granted. You see it and you think, it doesn't capture your attention. Here's a people that understand the wildlife. They understand the animals and the birds.
Jim McKenzie is from Grandmother's Bay, 200 kilometers north of La Ronge. He's just returned from a week of guiding these Americans at a fishing camp much further north. Over the years, he's shared his culture, and along the way, he's learned a thing or two about the rest of the world.
Oh, I met some guys from China, Scotland, and what do you call that? States, all over states. Some colored people too.
As is always the case, the North has a lot of fish, and stories too. These Americans will go home with plenty of both.
I really liked the Northern. They were really aggressive, I guess. I never got into them like that. We got onto shores and nailed them all the time. Real good-sized ones too.
Many of those stories include Jim McKenzie.
The last day I went with him in the boat, he was really good. Showed me a few different things. He's a really good guide. I thought he was taught me a lot, and he's good to talk to and everything like that too. He's good, friendly, and accommodating.
Jim was good, very accommodating. He tried very hard. We got along real well with him, and I think he got along with us fine.
Here, radically different lifestyles and culture take a back seat to fishing and storytelling.
We have a significant native population in our part of the country where we live, so it's not a big adjustment. For the first day, I suppose there's a period of adjustment, but after a while, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Hopefully it didn't matter to him because it doesn't matter to us.
Northern adventures don't always require motorboats and airplanes, and it's not only Aboriginal people who know the area.
We have about 50 canoes that I rent out, and so a lot of people come and they say, you know, we want to go on a 5-day canoe trip, what can you suggest? And we help them figure out a route and rent them canoes and whatever other gear they need, and away they go.
Rick knows the Churchill. In fact, he knows it better than many Aboriginal people. His clients come from all over the world.
I guess the biggest thing for me is to take people and show them the stuff that I'd found, the exciting things, the pretty things, the little nooks and crannies that are interesting. And at the start, I was out there all the time, and then the last number of years I've been in the office, and then the excitement is to take people and I can do like 5 trips vicariously in an afternoon, whereas before it'd take 5 days to do one.
For Rick, the lakes and rivers are not just for fishing, and his clients know that. Many just want to experience the great outdoors. He says there's always something new to see just around the bend.
Probably about 15 years ago when I was there the first time, I was sitting at the bottom of the waterfall just letting the water hit my back. It was nice and cool on a hot day, and then I leaned back and I fell right over backwards into this big cavern that was behind the waterfall. I didn't know it was there. And so now I can tell people, you know, if you go upstream and if you go to that spot, there's this waterfall and you can step right through the waterfall, and there's a big cave back there and you can fit about 3 people in that cave, and it's pretty cool.
Nowadays, Rick spends much of his time in and around the office.
There's hardly any water coming down.
Kevin Schultz is his main guide. For him, guiding is not just a job.
I enjoy it, showing people what we have in our own province. You know, our country is amazing, let alone our province. I'm going to run out of years to see my own province, all the areas. So it's nice to show other people what we have in our own backyard. And most Saskatchewan people don't even know what's here, or a lot of them don't get to see what's here. As soon as we get off the road, as soon as we get off the first portage, we're gone. So there's a big wilderness out there, and it's yet untouched for the most part. And that's what people come to see from all over the world.
Kevin's knowledge of the area is as vast as the land he explores.
They're here to learn, and that's the name of the game. It's like saying everybody wants to be a hockey coach or something. You know, they know hockey in Canada, so it's like, well, it's a canoe, I know how to canoe. Well, there's a lot to learn. You never end. There's new canoes, you get a new canoe partner, the river's different, the water level's different, so it's always interesting.
He will share the knowledge with anyone who will listen. That sets him apart from many Aboriginal guides. Their knowledge and quiet personality is ideal for fishing. Kevin Schultz, on the other hand, is a kind of guide ideally suited for the visitor wanting more than a big fish. Along with fishing and the northern experience, Aboriginal culture is a magnet for tourists.
So what we're seeing is that interest in Aboriginal culture, but we're also seeing just that interest in environmental and sort of the ecology and the wilderness aspects of northern Saskatchewan. That wilderness stuff leads to an interest in adventure tourism, an interest in all sorts of other things like the cultural aspects of the people that have always lived here.
Over here we have snowshoes.
Meet Sally McKenzie. Once you've met her, you will remember her forever. She's a true character of the North, lively, funny, friendly, and learned. And that knowledge plays a huge role in educating tourists. She and Rick Driediger are partners in marketing the North. Rick brings clients from his outfitting camps to visit Sally. It's the opportunity to enjoy a genuine cultural experience.
I feel proud to share my heritage and my traditions, because it's slowly being lost. There's communities in the north here that come to me and say, "Oh my goodness, you know so much culture," and I thank my parents for that.
Sally was once a guide for Rick. Now she spends much of her time making beads and outfits. She gathers birch bark for baskets as well as art. These are birch bark impressions. She is also an avid hunter, wild rice farmer, trapper, and fisher. For her, the bush, the lakes, and the animals are all part of who she is.
This is our homeland, and when visitors come down, I feel that we should be able to share our traditions with them. This is how we live. Like we're telling them, this is how we live. This is how we lived for many years. Most of the work that I picked up was from my parents, and when I first started birch bark biting, I let it go for 2 years, and then my mom came to me and said, you know, when you pick up something, don't just drop it like that. Continue. Said, pass it on.
When we return, we'll look at what the future holds for Aboriginal people in the North. There's a saying that goes, a waterfall and a strong person are alike. They both channel their own paths. The same can be said for many northern Aboriginal people who struggle to hold on to a traditional lifestyle. Nestoyac Falls is a symbol of the beauty and power of the North. They've long been a draw for visitors. Now, these same non-native tourists are beginning to see a local Aboriginal people with the same sense of wonder, a culture that is strong, steeped in tradition, yet struggling to survive in an encroaching outside world.
There's an incredible interest in all things Aboriginal. Not only here in Canada, as people struggle to come to terms with sort of treaty issues and treaty rights and all of those sorts of things and what they mean, but also when you move to Europe or even in the Americas or in the United States, where a lot of Aboriginal culture was just sort of merged in, and in Canada, that didn't happen. There wasn't nearly as much assimilation. So you're seeing a lot of interest from Americans as well in the Aboriginal cultures that we still have here.
John Charles knows that. It's his mission to keep the younger generation interested in both culture and the employment opportunities it spawns.
That's why I'm teaching my boys and see my grandkids. I want them to learn, to make a living this way, because nowadays there's hardly any jobs.
Guiding may not make him rich, but at the end of the day, his job allows him to carry on a proud history. As he embarks on his daily guiding trips, childhood memories of a life on the river and lakes brings his life full circle.
That's the only way we survive guiding. My dad used to be a guide. He used to make $10 a day in that time when I was young. So I started when I was 14 years old.
Upstream from where John works, Rick's life is similar to that of John's. Both have a deep respect for nature.
It's the adventure, it's getting away from sort of the everyday kinds of pressures that one has at home. The phone ringing all the time, for me, that's a big one. I love getting away from my office because the phone can't reach me then. And just being in a place that's quiet, peaceful, and sort of more back to the basic kind of living. And just being out in the land, being out in nature is still, I think, the attraction for me and the attraction for most people, I think.
But it is also about business and making a living. Whether it's in summer or winter, Aboriginal people are working alongside their non-native brothers and sisters.
I think that tourism has that potential. I think that what we have to offer in terms of a product in northern Saskatchewan is second to none in the world. And I think that Aboriginal people are a key component of that. I think when we look at year-round tourism and we look at some of the potential of that industry, there needs to be that quantum leap forward.
There's more and more of a pride among the Native people, at least in this area, in their own culture, and realizing they do have something incredibly valuable to share and incredibly interesting to share. So I think I think over the next 10 or 15 years we're going to see a big change in that, and the demand is there. If I had 3 or 4 really good canoe guides that were native people, they would be busy all the time.
What kind of moose?
A bull moose?
A bull moose.
Sally Mackenzie will continue to use nature and culture as tools for teaching.
For the past 10 years, we've been teaching the students in our school how to about traditional life. We take them out into the bush and we show them how things are done.
Like her neighbor John, Sally is only doing what comes naturally. It's something she learned as a little girl.
When we came home from the boarding home, residential school, my father would send a plane and take us out to the trap line, and it'd be nothing but traditional life over there. And when we came back, they spoke Cree to us. So we never forgot our language, we never forgot our traditions.
As the sun sets on the north, the landscape, its people, and their culture, there's an understanding among people like John Charles and Sally Mackenzie. Opportunity waits, the opportunity to earn a living, share a lifestyle with others, and in doing so keep alive a culture often overlooked and at times threatened by the forces of change. And if that isn't enough, how many people can end their day with a view like this? However you look at it, tourism in the north is big business, and Aboriginal people are involved. But while some take an active role, others have chosen not to. There's a whole generation who've lost their traditional lifestyle and the skills that go along with it. But as you've seen, there are opportunities for them to rekindle the spirit of our forefathers. I'm Nelson Bird. Thanks for watching, and good night.